You know that feeling, right? You're in a conversation, you're doing everything you're supposed to do. You're nodding, you're making eye contact, you're even offering solutions, but you can just tell the other person walks away feeling completely unheard. It is so frustrating. Well, today we're going to dive deep into this listening paradox and figure out what's really going on just beneath the surface. So let's meet our main character for this story, a manager. And this quote, "This is them, completely stumped. They're following all the rules from the leadership books, but something is just broken." You can feel their frustration, and it perfectly sets the stage for a huge breakthrough about what it actually means to listen. All right, part one, the paradox. So our manager's story really kicks off with an employee named Priya. She comes to him, says she's overwhelmed. He thinks he's handled it like a pro. But then, the very next day, Priya is right back in his office with the exact same problem. And there it is, the paradox in plain sight. He was hearing every single word, but somehow missing the entire message. Now, what's fascinating here is just how textbook the manager's approach was. I mean, look at this. He made eye contact, he showed empathy, and he jumped right into a super logical solution. Let's redistribute some tasks. On paper, that is an A+ response. But in the real world, it was a complete and total failure. So that's the mystery we need to solve. Why didn't it work? And this is the question that changes everything for him. The manager finally realizes that his listening is just scratching the surface. There's this deeper current, an unspoken message that he just can't quite get a handle on. And that feeling, that sense that you're missing something, that's the signal that you need a completely different kind of listening. So this brings us to part two, the revelation. The manager's coach introduces this really game-changing idea. Every single conversation we have is happening on two different levels at the exact same time. And most of us, we're only tuned into one of them. And here they are. You've got the social level, that's the what, the literal words being said. So let me help with your workload. Seems great, right? But then there's the psychological level. This is the implicit, unstated feeling underneath. And in this case, the manager's helpful offer was heard by Priya as, "You're not capable of handling this." And boom, that's the disconnect. So this thing actually has a name. It's called an ulterior transaction. And here is the absolute key you have to remember. It does not matter how helpful or logical your words are on the social level. The outcome of the conversation, how the person actually feels when they walk away, is always, and I mean always, determined by that hidden psychological message. This is the manager's big aha moment. This is when the light bulb goes off. He realizes that in his attempt to be the problem solver, he accidentally confirmed his employee's deepest, most private fear. He thought he was managing tasks, but he was actually interacting with her insecurity, and he didn't even know it. Okay, so the manager now understands he needs to listen for that underlying emotion. But of course, that opens up a whole new can of worms, right? How do you know if the feeling you're seeing is even the real one? This brings us to another critical idea. Not all feelings are what they seem. We have to learn to tell the difference between what's authentic and what's just a cover. So, an authentic feeling is just what it sounds like. It's a genuine response to what's happening right now. But a racket feeling, that's different. It's a familiar, almost rehearsed emotion that we use to cover up something that feels more vulnerable. It's a go-to feeling. Think of it like an emotional habit that's hard to break. So let's take another person on the team, Brian. Every single time the manager gives him feedback, any feedback, Brian gets angry. He gets defensive. It's the same reaction every single time, like clockwork. That repetitive pattern, that is a huge clue that the anger isn't the true emotion here. It's his racket. It's his shield. And this is the question that really shifts a manager into a coach. Instead of just reacting to Brian's anger, getting defensive yourself, the goal becomes to get curious about it. What is this anger protecting? What's the more vulnerable feeling, like fear or maybe shame, that it's hiding? And these racket feelings, they're not just random. They serve a very real purpose. They're a survival strategy, an adaptation that probably worked really well for that person at some point, maybe way back in their childhood. For Brian, his anger works. It gets people to back off, which protects him from feeling shame. But the downside is it also keeps him completely stuck. So, armed with all this new knowledge about psychological levels and racket feelings, how does our manager actually change his behavior? I mean, what does this new kind of conversation really look like in the real world? The key, it turns out, is to look for one simple thing: incongruence.
This is your flashing red light that there's a psychological message hiding under the social one. It's when Priya says, "I'm fine," but her shoulders are slumped and she won't make eye contact. That gap between the words and the body language, that's where the real conversation is just waiting to happen. And here's the playbook. It's actually not that complicated. You don't have to be a mind reader. You just notice that gap. Then you state your observation, gently, without any judgment. Something like, "Hey, I hear you saying this, and I'm also seeing that." And then you just ask a genuinely curious question to invite them to explore it with you.
This is exactly what our manager could have said to Priya the second time around. See how it's not an accusation, it's an invitation. It basically says, I see you, the real you, beyond just the words, and I'm willing to go there with you if you want to. This one shift in language can change the entire dynamic of a relationship.
And this really captures the manager's transformation perfectly. It's the realization that all this time he's been operating on like 50% of the available data. Learning to hear the psychological level is like switching from mono to stereo. Suddenly, you can hear the whole rich, complex human reality of what's going on. But the journey doesn't end there, with just learning how to listen to other people. The final, and maybe the most challenging step, is to turn this incredibly powerful lens of awareness back on ourselves.
You see, the coach reveals one last final layer. Those recurring problems we have, those racket feelings we keep going back to, they're often driven by something even deeper. It's called a script, a set of core beliefs about ourselves and the world that we decided on when we were kids, and now we just live them out on autopilot as adults without even knowing it. And this is the really wild thought I want to leave you with. What if your go-to way of solving problems or giving feedback or even showing support isn't really a conscious professional strategy at all? What happens when you realize it might be an echo of a rule you wrote for yourself decades ago? Uncovering that script? Well, that's the next frontier.